Good morning, Girish sir.
Good morning, sir.
Parihar sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, try the screen share.
Try to screen share. Sir, even permit me to share the screen.
Okay.
कैसे प्रेजेंटेशन कैसे अर्जुन उसमें करें? मेरा प्रेजेंटेशन को कैसे शेयर करना?
मोबाइल में लॉगिन चलेगा. चलो लॉगिन कर मोबाइल में.
Sir, you have to enable the.
Yes, sir. I am logging from the other device.
Okay. Okay.
अच्छा कुछ सेकंड में तो एक सेकंड का सरल
Yes, sir.
So just a moment, sir.
Yes, sir. Comes to you all. First of all, I would like to welcome on behalf of IDMP State and Dr. Anup Vyas sir, our president, Dr. Manish Verma sir, CDA chairman, head office, Dr. Deepak Makhijani sir, Dr. Pratima Bajpayee madam, our president-elect, and of course, our speakers for the day, Dr. Ajay Parihar, HOD, Department of Oral Medicine and Diagnosis, GDC Indore, and our own Dr. Vijay Kumar Gire, Honorary Secretary for the Maharashtra chapter AUMSI, and all the participants from all over India. We welcome you all on this very important session, which we were planning for quite a while. And as the mucormycosis is rapidly spreading, so was our wait. And we didn't want to wait any further and want to have the best panel which we can to throw the light on mucormycosis as far as dentists are concerned. And believe me, friend, as you can see that even the government of India has taken the seriousness into cognizance and declared mucormycosis as a pandemic condition and asked all the states to declare mucormycosis as a pandemic condition throughout the India. And as it may seems that as was the COVID, which appeared all of a sudden, and knowledge update was not with all the specialists throughout India. And had it not gone, we are again facing the other pandemic of mucormycosis. Again, the knowledge which we all the dentists need to have, we are lacking the evidence-based knowledge throughout India, and we need specialists like Dr. Parihar and Dr. Gire, who are into the field, and they are serving day and night along with other medical fraternity to give some solutions to this very what I can say a harsh situation, and it is so sad to see that less can be done about it right now. And I hope that meetings like this throughout India will make some consensus throughout India, so that we can follow some guideline in the time to come to stop this menace. Being said that, I'll ask Dr. Anup Vyas, our president, to kindly give a welcome message and to introduce our speakers.
Sir, unmute yourself.
थैंक यू डॉक्टर विवेक। आप सभी का बहुत बहुत स्वागत है, सारे डिग्निटरीज का, और स्पेशली आज के जो स्पीकर्स हैं डॉक्टर गिरे, डॉक्टर परिहार, जो कि आज म्यूकोमाइकोसिस जो एक पेंडेमिक है इस समय, और जो हमारे से एज ए प्रोफेशनल डायरेक्टली कंसर्न रखता है, की वजह से के ऊपर, उसकी गंभीरता के ऊपर, उसमें हमारे रोल के ऊपर, ताकि हम लोगों को अच्छे तरीके से सर्व कर पाएँ, इसके ऊपर जो फोकस करने वाले हैं। स्पेशली मैं हेड ऑफिस से जो रिप्रेजेंटेटिव हैं डॉक्टर दीपक माकेजानी और डॉक्टर मनीष वर्मा का भी स्वागत करता हूं, डॉक्टर आशीष का और बाकी सारे डिग्निटरीज का जो आज के इस सेमिनार में, इस वेबिनार में जो हैं वो आज उपस्थित हुए हैं। और एमपी ब्रांच के लिए और इंदौर ब्रांच के लिए तो जो ये कुछ समय से बहुत ही ज़्यादा स्वर्णिम काल बोल सकते हैं, उस टाइप का चल रहा है कि हमारे ब्रांच के, हमारे स्टेट ब्रांच के, हमारे लोकल ब्रांच के डॉक्टर अशोक खंडेलवाल जो हैं, उनको एज ए DCI प्रेसिडेंट, एक्टिंग DCI प्रेसिडेंट जो है वो भारत सरकार ने उनको नियुक्त किया है। और हम सबों की तरफ से उनको बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं हम प्रेषित करते हैं, और साथ में ये आशा भी करते हैं कि डेफिनेटली डेंटिस्ट्री का जो है और स्वर्णिम दिन आगे बहुत जल्दी ही आएगा एज ए प्रोफेशनल, और हम लोग एक अच्छा अपना योगदान समाज के लिए और देश के लिए दे पाएंगे। इसके साथ ही मैं आज के जो हमारे फर्स्ट स्पीकर हैं डॉक्टर अजय परिहार, उनका भी इंट्रोडक्शन दे रहा हूं। डॉक्टर अजय परिहार जो बहुत अच्छे इंसान भी हैं सबसे पहले तो, और बहुत बड़े डेंटिस्ट्री के MP के सबसे बड़े एंटरप्रेनर भी बोल सकता हूं मैं उनको। एंटरप्रेनर हैं हमारी डेंटिस्ट्री फील्ड के, और उन्होंने बताया है कि किस तरीके से वर्क और लाइफ का बैलेंस जो है वो हम रख सकते हैं अपने प्रोफेशन के साथ साथ। आज वो हमारे साथ में है। मैं डॉक्टर परिहार का बहुत बहुत स्वागत करता हूं और उनको धन्यवाद देता हूं कि वो हमारे बीच में आए। डॉक्टर अजय परिहार जो प्रोफेसर एंड हेड ऑफ द डिपार्टमेंट ओरल मेडिसिन रेडियोलॉजी, गवर्नमेंट कॉलेज ऑफ डेंटिस्ट्री इंदौर में है। वो फेलो हैं पीरे फचार्ड अकादमी के मैक्सिलोफेशियल रेडियोलॉजी एची गाकुनिन यूनिवर्सिटी के, और साथ में जापान में एडिटर इन चीफ हैं जर्नल ऑफ इंडियन एकेडमी ऑफ ओरल मेडिसिन एंड रेडियोलॉजी के रहे हैं 2017 से 2019 के बीच में। वाइस प्रेसिडेंट रहे हैं वो इंडियन एकेडमी ऑफ ओरल मेडिसिन के 2014 से 16 में, और इसके पहले उन्होंने काफ़ी अपनी एकेडमिक जर्नी जो है वो बहुत ही उत्साह के साथ में अलग अलग जगह पे अपना योगदान देते हुए करी, और फिलहाल वो आप गवर्नमेंट डेंटल कॉलेज में प्रोफेसर एंड हेड ऑफ द डिपार्टमेंट हैं। इसके अलावा वो एग्जीक्यूटिव एडिटर हैं MPMSU जर्नल ऑफ डेंटिस्ट्री के, असिस्टेंट एडिटर हैं जर्नल ऑफ डेंटिस्ट्री PA पहर जर्नल ऑफ डेंटिस्ट्री उदयपुर के, और बोर्ड ऑफ स्टडी के मेंबर हैं MPMSU यूनिवर्सिटी के। बहुत सारी जर्नल्स के वो रिव्यूअर हैं, और काफ़ी सारे पब्लिकेशन उनके नाम पे नेशनल और इंटरनेशनल जर्नल्स में उनके नाम पे हैं। मैं डॉक्टर परिहार का एक बार फिर से बहुत बहुत स्वागत करता हूँ।
Sir, let me introduce Dr. Vijay Gire.
हाँ,
Dr. Vijay Gire is oral and maxillofacial surgeon, professor and head of the Department of Implantology at Dr. H.S. RSM Dental College. Being said that, he is also honorary general secretary of Maharashtra State Chapter of AOMSI. And yesterday he was also chosen for a task force of MSDC for mucormycosis at Maharashtra. He is also executive committee member of national body of AOMSI. He is a versatile maxillofacial surgeon, having practice at very well established practice at Aurangabad, and he graduated in from MUHS in 2005. He is a very renowned face in the field of craniomaxillofacial surgery, and as far as implantology is concerned, he is one of the topmost leading practitioners of Maharashtra. So being said that, let us start with the first session of today, which will be taken by Dr. Vijay Kumar Gire, and which will be introducing the topic to all of us. So Gire sir, kindly start with the session.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words and introduction. So stop screen sharing. Allow me the screen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
पासवर्ड बोलना सर जी
Good morning, everyone. On this Sunday morning, we all have gathered here to discuss on a very burning issue, that's mucormycosis in current scenario. Before starting, I request all the participants kindly maintain the decorum. Please keep yourself muted. It disturbs everyone. So please maintain the decorum. So that's just a request. Before beginning, let me thank IDA MP State for giving me an opportunity to share my little bit experience with all of you and make you aware about how the dental surgeon can be a frontline warrior against this black fungus or mucormycosis. Friends, so we are going to discuss how we can save someone's life, someone's eye, or someone's job by early detection of this mucormycosis and guiding them appropriately for the treatment. We have gone through a variety of phases of this COVID pandemic since it has started in 2019, and almost we are more than 18 months with this pandemic. We have seen all the phases of lockdown, unlock, relock, and whatnot. Today, we are with more than 3 vaccines and almost more than 4-5 CRs people have been vaccinated. Then what is the learning objective of today's presentation? Friend, today we are going to discuss about role of dental surgeon in early detection and management of mucormycosis. We know since last 1.5 years, all the dental surgeons, we are facing a tough time in practicing. Last year, around the same time, we all were discussing about how safely deliver the dental treatment, how we can protect ourselves, our patient, and ensure the safety of our staff too, so that we can provide a safe environment in dental clinic. And now we are discussing how to manage the consequences of COVID or probably one aspect of post-COVID syndrome. So friend, before starting the actual presentation, I would like to put forth a disclaimer that this is a new disease, like probably a new ramification of the old disease, what we can say. And I have made every possible effort to collect all the data, scientific data from all reliable resources. In spite of that, as the guidelines are changing and they are very dynamic, like since yesterday only we had a meeting with task force, so that the guidelines are going to be very dynamic, and we have to keep ourselves updated with the guidelines issued by the authority from the Ministry of Health, every state's task force, and we have to be updated with all this. But to the best of my knowledge, I will share the current whatever evidence-based scenario we have and evidence combined with the experience what I have. So post-COVID mucormycosis, everyone is discussing social media, electronic media, Facebook, Twitter, what all. everything is flooded with mucormycosis, and mucormycosis. Then is this a new disease? What we are discussing, mucormycosis? The answer is definitely not. Mucormycosis was since long, but it was previously seen only in a patients who had uncontrolled diabetes, like hematological malignancies, renal transplant patient, hepatic patient, particularly the patient in which the immunity was compromised to the great extent. But then, and we all know this mucormycosis is a Norman commensal fungi of the sinuses and upper aerodigestive tract. But in healthy individuals, it is not affecting. It is an opportunistic fungus. Whenever the immunity is suppressed to a great extent, it invades the vessel, and it lead to necrosis. If it is a known fungi, if it is a known disease, then why we are discussing mucormycosis today? Because there is a rampant surge or rampant increase in the number of cases which we are reporting. If I have to share my personal experience, before this pandemic, annually, like around 5 to 6 cases only I used to operate for the mucormycosis. And today, the cases which I used to operate annually, I almost operating every day. If you see, this is my OT list, some of my OT list. Every day, at least 3 to 4 cases, we are operating on a day-to-day basis. And this is since last more than 30 days. So that's why we are discussing mucormycosis today. And now next question is, why this mucormycosis is more rampant in a post-COVID patient? Is it the steroid that is leading? Is the remdesivir responsible for this increase or rampant surge? Or tocilizumab is responsible? Or that's hyperglycemic state or increased serum ferritin? So I thought, let's look into literature. But as of now, we don't have a level 1 evidence. What I could get is one case report review. So in that, they have reviewed 927 cases, and all the cases were either post-diabetic, post-malignant, or all the immunocompromised patient. But we didn't get a first-hand or first-level evidence for a post-COVID mucormycosis. Then I thought, let's look into my own data. So when I reviewed 103, sorry, this is a slide. So 103 patients when we reviewed out of the our own data, in that what we could see that non-COVID were like, we are saying post-COVID, but 24 patients, they were not detected for COVID or not treated for COVID. So when we say they were not detected for COVID, when they were not treated for COVID, so 24% of the patients were without any use of drugs which are used for management of your COVID, like your steroids, your tocilizumab or remdesivir. So definitely these are not the sole etiological factor what it means to be. Yes, what was common finding? Increase or the hyperglycemic state and serum ferritin level. So if I have to conclude my own data, what I can say, this is a multifactorial. This is a multifactorial disease which post-COVID altered immunity. So altered host immunity is the most common cause, which is having a additive factors or a synergistic factor like hyperglycemia, the increased serum ferritin level, local acidic pH, because whenever the host immunity is altered, there is increased serum ferritin level, and as there is inflammation, there is acidic pH. So increased serum ferritin level and increased local acidic pH creates an favorable environment for multiplication and growth of this mucor fungi, and it multiplies. And this filamentous fungi has a typical affinity for blood vessel. What this fungi does, it multiply, and the colony of this fungi invade. This has affinity, it has attraction toward the vessel. It invade inside the vessel and form the fungal thrombi, which lead to complete vascular occlusion. And after that vascular occlusion, the area which is supplied by the vessel undergoes ischemia and ischemic necrosis. That is what is etiopathogenesis and how this fungi lead to. So lead to mucormycosis or the osteomyelitis or post-COVID fungal osteomyelitis. So infection is due to altered host response, and as this fungi has affinity for vessel, it invades inside the vessel, forms the thrombi and lead to avascular necrosis. And This phenomena itself explain why the mucormycosis fungal osteomyelitis is more common in maxilla, because maxilla has rich vascular supply and all the medium to small size vessels are a typical vessel which are invaded by this mucormycosis fungi, right? So post-COVID mucormycosis, before this pandemic, all the cases which were involving the maxillofacial region, they all were known as rhinocerebral mucormycosis. But friends, now we need to probably subclassify this. So for the sake of understanding, depending on various clinical presentation, I have divided the presentation into 4 parts. One is sinoalveolar. Sinoalveolar are the cases in which only maxillary sinus and maxillary alveolus is involved. That is sinoalveolar. Then sinoorbital, in which your sphenoid and ethmoids are involved, which invades the orbit through lamina popracia and can lead to blindness. That is sinoorbital. Then sinoorbitomaxillary, it means it involves ethmoids, orbit, and maxillary sinus along with the maxilla, that is sinoorbitomaxillary. And rhinocerebral, along with the facial involvement, if there is any sort of intracranial extension, that can be rhinocerebral, and that is one of the most fatal entity. So how these cases can present to our dental surgeon colleague? Let's see the clinical presentation. I hope etiopathogenesis and classification or subclassification is clear to everyone. Now let's move on how these cases manifest clinically, or what will be the initial clinical presentation. So friend, the presentation will vary and depend on when you are seeing the patient or when the patient is reporting to you. As I already said, that the etiopathogenesis is vascular occlusion. So whenever there is a vascular occlusion and the ischemic changes starts, probably that will be the first clinical presentation. So etiopathogenesis with a clinical presentation I am trying to club. So whenever the vascular, the fungal thrombi has invaded the vessel and it has occluded the blood vessel, and there is ischemia of the area supplied by that vessel, then what will be the clinical presentation depending on the area involvement. So the cases which are involving sinomaxillary or sinoalveolar, like in which the maxillary sinus and alveolus is involved, so these we can say the minor form of what we can say the initial form of presentation, or we can say a least fatal form of presentation. So these patients may present with non-specific severe or orofacial pain. So whenever there is avascular necrosis, like in your acute pulpitis, what kind of severe pain we get, similar patient will complain of severe orofacial pain. And on oral examination, you will not able to identify any local cause. So if there is any non-specific pain of severe intensity and patient gives history, that this will be like anywhere from the 5 days to 10 days from the when the patient is detected for COVID. Like now we are seeing many cases who are reported whenever patient is in active COVID infection. So this presentation ranges anywhere from 5th COVID positivity day to 10th COVID positivity day. So they will have a severe pain in orofacial region. Subsequently, they may have a paresthesia of the infraorbital area. They will have a numbness of the lateral wall of nose or the lip, or even if there is a nasopalatine involvement, it can have numbness in the anterior part of the palate. If you see clinically, the gingiva will be absolutely healthy. There will be no pocket formation. There will be no necrosis of the mucosa, no white patch, no black patch. And this may appear as absolutely healthy. And patient will present with signs of sinusitis. If in this patient, you check clinically, you will able to see tenderness on the particularly that particular entire quadrant which is affected. If you get a scan done, like in this is a patient who reported with only severe pain, and when we did a CT scan, the complete sinus was obliterated, but there was no bony erosion, no bony changes. And these were initial changes. Now, if given a choice to me, today I will do a different scan. Probably Dr. Pariyar sir will add on the imaging part better way. So that part I will not encroach in this part of presentation. So this kind of initial presentation, absolutely healthy gingiva, no teeth mobility, only with severe pain, Paresthesia, severe undiagnosed pain. If there is no odontogenic cause and there is a severe pain, and particularly in multiple teeth, always suspect mucormycosis in this patient until and unless otherwise ruled out. Like I told you, whenever in these patients we take them for operation, or when we take them for removal or surgical management, what we could see, you can see this is a greater palatine vessel which is completely thrombosed. This is a descending palatine vessel which is completely thrombosed, and here you can see another greater palatine vessel. So friends, when these initial cases, which otherwise if you see clinically are looking very healthy, when we do a surgical exploration, the entire vessels are thrombosed. You can see the way we see the vessels thrombosed in cadavers, that kind of thrombosis we can see, and this is a typical black fungus presentation, and that's why it is called as black fungi. So it leads to complete occlusion. And when we do a surgical exploration to operate this patient, the bone will appear yellowish, little yellowish, and when we drill it, there will be no blood supply to this bone, and probably the entire maxilla has avascular necrosis without mobility of a single tooth. As this is a dead bone and which is a nidus for infection, we have to be aggressively debride this. I will discuss it in detail about management part. So how we can make out the vascular and non-vascular bone? See this, what I said, the clinically looking healthy gingiva, when we explore it surgically, I think now this is a video which can absolutely tell you what is the difference between viable and non-viable bone. So this bone may look like, if you say otherwise, may look healthy, but it is mottling is seen. There is absolute no blood supply. There is yellow discoloration, and this is the initial phase of a vascular necrosis. At this stage, if you get a CT scan, CBCT or whatsoever done, there will be no mottling or erosion. We are typically known to see that whenever there is osteomyelitis, we should see a moth-ridden appearance, but this is avascular necrosis and acute osteomyelitis. It will not show any radiological changes, friend. So even if a sinusitis is given on a imaging reporting, so don't delay the treatment, because this, you can see the underlying picture like this video, where the bone will be completely necrosed. I think this video gives a good clarity about viable and non-viable bone. Yes, then what are the problem, why we are discussing it with our dental surgeon colleague today? Because whenever patient report to us with severe pain, we always think that there may be some odontogenic cause, and some of our dental surgeon colleagues are ending up with starting root canal. This patient reported with severe pain on the left side. There was absolutely healthy gingiva around it. The tooth were not mobile. They were like there was generalized tenderness on the entire quadrant. And then dental surgeon started a root canal in this patient. So what I want to stress here, friend, if you are not able to find out any reason for the pain, particularly which is of odontogenic origin, in that case, don't start the empirical dental treatment like the way we used to think, this tooth may be having a cracked tooth syndrome, tooth may be non-vital. Before coming to that conclusion, always rule out the possibility of mucormycosis, or you will burn your finger badly. This patient reported to me after a week, there was exfoliation of the second premolar, and there were multiple draining sinuses by that time, and then we have to do hemimaxillectomy this patient. This is another patient, same way. A dental surgeon did extraction and started root canal with the other tooth. The site was not healing. There was exposed dead bone, and then this you can see now started with a draining sinus with premolar, and all the teeth had mobility. So friend, if you have any draining sinus, so we all are aware, before the draining sinus appear clinically, there has to be some periapical pathology present. If you have a draining sinus present without having a periapical pathology radiologically, always have a suspicion, because We all are aware, until and unless there is a periapical pathology, it can't lead to a sinus formation. So use that, and whenever in doubt, always take help of your oral surgeon colleague. They probably, or discuss with them, show them the photographs, send them the pictures, and always everyone will be more than happy to help you out. So we need to work in a team, collaborate with our friends, discuss with them, and learn from others' mistake, because we will not get opportunity to commit each and every mistake, right? And when these patients are untreated for 10 to 15 days, then there is a super added bacterial infection, and later on patient can present with this kind of presentation. These are sinoalveolar, in which your maxillary sinus and maxilla is involved. You can see in a first image, we have multiple draining sinuses, bogie gingiva on right side. The earliest or the first clinical sign can be attachment loss or bogginess of the gingiva. May not have multiple draining sinuses like this. This is another case. You can see the complete maxilla is swollen. It is like we can say inflammatory gingival hyperplasia. In some cases, you may see a whitish patch on the palate, which is a necrotic area. You may see a black patch, which can be a dry gangrene sort of thing, or you can see a white patch. Routinely we see in a chemical burn, so it can be a wet gangrene. So these are the presentation of delayed stage. Each and every case may not present like this. So friend, again I will revise. First 5 to 10 days, clinically the gingiva will be absolutely healthy. You will not able to find out anything. Patient will complain of severe non-specific pain. There will be paresthesia, there will be numbness, there will be headache, there will be fullness on that side. So these will be the initial presentation, and these will be like draining sinuses, bogginess of the gingiva, teeth mobility, white slub patch tissue, the black necrotic tissue. These will be the delayed presentation, and these are after at least the 4 weeks from the day of infectivity. What we see, this is a typical video which shows a delayed presentation. This is the segmental mobility. So all the teeth will be mobile, and also they will be compressible. We can say a grade 4 mobility. So these are all the sinoalveolar cases. Now coming to the next variant, that is sino-orbitomaxillary, in which the orbit, maxillary sinus, and the maxilla is involved. So these patients typically present with the symptoms involving all the 3 parts. If it is sino-orbital presentation, patient will complain of proptosis, blurring of the vision. The first symptom will be the blurring of the vision and proptosis of the eye. There will be a lid drop. So the upper lip patient will not able to close the eye completely. If you ask the patient to follow your finger, there will be restriction in the ocular movement, what is known as ophthalmoplegia. Probably this is the first warning sign of muscle cone involvement. Yes, right? And if you see in the same patient, we had a palatal necrosis, and when we did MRI, the gadolinium enhanced MRI, we could see there was complete enhancement of the maxillary sinus. There was invasion into the muscle cone by the fungi, and by the time this patient reported, there was complete vision loss. So in this patient, probably we will lose the eye. So these are the things. And if we don't treat this patient at early stage, they can lead to rhinocerebral mucormycosis, which is even more fatal. And now we know in our Indian scenario, we are trying many home remedies. Similarly, this patient did some hot fermentation. You can see the skin necrosis. So this patient will typically present with pain around the orbit, restriction in ocular movement, proptosis like bulging of the eyeball, blurring of the vision. There will be paresthesia in the infraorbital area. There may be a discoloration or not. Because this is a delayed presentation. That's why there is this black discoloration. So it may or may not be. Tooth mobility and draining sinuses may or may not be, depend on when the patient is presenting. So at the same time, this fungus can invade orbit, maxillary sinus, and maxilla. It is not always going to be maxillary sinus and maxillary alveolus only. And third, which is probably on the deadly variant or probably a more morbid variant, that is a sino-orbital. In this kind of patient, the maxillary sinus are not affected to that great extent, but the disease begins with ethmoid and sphenoid. And as we know, on the medial aspect of the orbit, we have a very paper thin bone, that is a lamina papyracea, which is separating the posterior ethmoid from the orbit. And from that area, the fungus can easily invade into the muscle cone, and it can invade the optic canal and lead to blindness. This is a story of, like, I have treated two young patients for whom I really feel very sorry. That one patient, 32-year-old lady, just started with a complaint of pain around the eye. Morning, she, by 11 o'clock, she visited to doctor. Doctor advised her for MRI. Like routinely the patient do, sir, we'll get the MRI done tomorrow. Hum kal scan karate hain. By the time she got the scan done next day morning and reported to me at Aurangabad from 150 kilometer place, that by that time she had complete vision loss. So friends, this infection has such a rapid spread. What I say, clinically, these are worse than the malignant lesion. Probably the most aggressive malignant lesion will not spread with the speed the mucormycosis is spreading. This is an infectious disease and it spreads very rapidly. If it is not diagnosed well within the time, not intervene well within the time, it can lead to the great degree of morbidity and mortality. So our role as a dental surgeon is to pick up these cases at earlier stage, guide them, treat them so that we can reduce mortality and morbidity. So the next part of the presentation is diagnostic modality, how we come to, how we diagnose these cases. Dr. Parihar sir will enlighten us about the role of imaging modality in detection of mucormycosis. So I will stop my screen sharing and Dr. Parihar sir will take over for the imaging part. I hope everything as of now is clear. I think we will take all the questions at the end of the session. Is that okay, Vivek sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So I will stop screen sharing. I think, yes. Parihar sir, please start your screen share.
Meanwhile, I will take the opportunity to welcome many dignitaries from all over India. Dr. Anand Kumar, Dr. Gopi from Chennai, and from many other states, many dignitaries have joined. Please pardon me if I personally cannot acknowledge each one of you, sir and ma'am, but definitely it makes our effort worthwhile, you being here. So thank you for being with us, and many of my friends whom I am not able to take the name, but welcome all. Parihar sir.
Good morning. I'm audible, Vivek sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And you can, you are able to see my screen also?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much. Good morning, one and all. And I thank IDA, Dr. Vivek Choksey sir, Dr. Anup Vyas sir, and all, Dr. Manish Verma sir, Dr. Deepak sir, for giving me opportunity to speak on mucormycosis. As a maxillofacial radiologist, we have started seeing these cases, I think, from last 1.5 years. The first case which I encountered was mandibular osteomyelitis. And as being said by the previous speaker, Dr. Gay, that what is important for us is to diagnose it at the right time. Initial diagnosis is one of the most important factors in helping the patient. So initial diagnosis is the keystone in management of these patients, one thing. Second thing, then I'll discuss how to initially diagnose your cases and how to rule out whether it is fungal osteomyelitis. Not every maxillary sinusitis is going to convert into mucormycosis. So routinely we advise OPG, but the only drawback with OPG is that posterior maxilla never comes perfect in OPGs. So if you are suspecting mucormycosis, OPG is not going to help you out. So, and one more thing, that IOPs are better. So most of the times, if you see all those cases of mucormycosis, mostly they start from premolar region, and they have two hypotheses behind that, that why it is always start from anterior maxilla, or why on the premolar region 1, 4, 1, 3, 1, 5, and 1, 6. These regions, right or left, whether it is right maxilla or left maxilla, but normally most of the erosions what you observe will start from here. So I'll start. So this is how it looks. This is a coronal section of maxillary sinus, right and left, and what you are seeing here are the concas. This is inferior concha, middle concha, and these are the ethmoidal sinus upwards. So normally they appear as hypodense or radiolucent or black. They are clear, and sometimes you will see there is a mucosal thickening over here. And this is a reactionary. Why I put this picture to show you that most of the times when there is a parapecal pathology, there is lifting of the floor of maxillary sinus, and you will always see this kind of mucosal thickening. Okay, so this is how it appears normal in cone beam CT. This is another picture which is again coronal, and here you see these ethmoidal cells also. So this most of the times when you're suspecting mucor and when you are evaluating CBCT data, then you have to see what is happening with the osteometal complex. If it is obliterated, in advanced cases, most of the mucor cases, you will see obliteration of osteometal complex. But initially, this is fine in mucor cases. But if you are suspecting for a bacterial sinusitis, then most of the times it is obliterated. So this is very important picture to see and to know that how we should suspect initial mucor cases. If you see the first picture, which is axial section, again, I'm repeating, most of the times I am seeing changes, the first changes in premolar region. So this is 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 6, 1, 7 region. And if you see these black dots, am I audible? I think, yeah. Can you unmute your mic, please? I think
sir,
Sarah.
I'm muting them. Yes, sir.
Thank you. So if you see, these are the very initial signs. So most of the times you will not see any changes in walls, whether it is anterior, posterior, lateral wall, or on the floor of maxillary sinus also. And few of the cases I've seen where there was no mucosal thickening, or like in this case, there's a mucosal thickening, mild mucosal thickening. But here the changes have been started. So whenever you see these black dots, whether it is mandible, whether it is maxillary alveolus, you should suspect that it is a mucor case. It is a very initial sign. It's difficult to pick up, but it is very initial sign of mucormycosis. And here also in this section, if you compare with and always compare with the opposite side. So if you compare the alveolar pattern or trabecular pattern in this side, on the left, compare with this side, there are multiple hypotenuse areas. Now this case, I've advised. Okay, so this is the other picture. This is a picture which is taken after almost 7 days. So initially it is up to here, and after 7 days it has involved the central side also. That is from the whole maxilla was central. So it is very aggressive lesion. I have seen cases where there was a localized lesion on mandible confined to hardly 2 or 3 teeth. And within 10 days, it has spread from condyle to condyle. I'll show you at the last that case. So it is very aggressive case. One thing which we have to understand that in CBCT, or when you are evaluating or suspecting a case of mucor, there are 2 important things to evaluate. One is sometimes you will not see aggressive changes or aggressive bone loss in maxilla or alveolar bone. But when you are suspecting, then there will be some trabecular pattern change when you compare with the opposite side. So initial changes in the trabecular pattern is a sign of mucormycosis in diagnosing initially. Later on, it is very easy to suspect that it is a fungal osteomyelitis or it is a mucormycosis. And sometimes it is not always necessary, as been told by the earlier speaker, that all the sinuses are involved. Most of the times, alveolus is involved, sometimes maxillary sinus and alveolus. It involves the other sinuses also. Like this is a mandibular case, which last case, which I discussed, if you remember that picture of maxilla, and you compare here also. If you compare with the right side towards the left side, there is an altered trabecular pattern. And this kind of bone loss, where there's a complete black kind of, what you see, these hypodense areas or reducent areas. So these are the very initial sign. Now you see the cortical bone, the outer cortical bone is intact. Even the lingual cortical bone is intact. But in the pattern of the left mandible, right mandible is completely altered if you compare with the. So this is again a very initial case of mucormycosis, and the patient, and most of the patient, whether it involves mandible or whether it involves maxilla or sinus, they complain of mobility or generalized pain or the swelling gingiva, or so these are the initial complaints. Like the same case, if you see, these are again a CBCT image. If you see this trabecular pattern here and the hypodense area in the right mandible, and you compare with the left, you will see definite changes. So these are the very initial changes where the outer cortical bone is completely intact. And these changes you will not appreciate in any other imaging, whether it is CT scan or whether it is MRI or whether it is OPG. Only CBCT can detect these kind of minor and very initial changes. And whatever you are seeing in blue color, it is air bubbles. So there's a feature in CBCT where you're able to see whether if it is more hypodense area or more radiolucent, then you can color it with a different color. The same patient. This is again a frontal sinus, then coming to modal sinus, which appears normal. Then going, this is the other axial section. So this is a video of axial section. Then maxillary sinus is started. These are posterior. You see, this is spinodal sinus. Okay. Then there is a mucosal thickening covering all part of maxilla. The other thing which you appreciate here is there is a thinning, generalized diffuse. If you see these small dots on all the walls, also, medial wall also, and the anterior wall also. So these small dots or diffuse bone loss in the walls, in the maxillary sinus walls, also a feature of mucormycosis. And again, if you see here, the outer cortical bone is intact on the right side, but here you will see small destruction. Again, the same reason, that is premolar canine reason. So initial, so important in managing mucormycosis, it is, as we'll discuss later on the management part, but it is difficult. When a full-fledged case of mucor comes, it is very difficult, but it is, it helps a patient a lot when you initially diagnose a mucor case. This is an advanced case of involving maxillary alveolus bilaterally as well as maxillary sinus. You see my destruction, and as been told, normally initially, like 2-3 months back, a lot of patients, they have come after extraction or mobility or self-exfoliation also. So this is another case where you see bone destruction in all the walls. And now how to differentiate whether it is bacterial or fungal? If it is bacterial sinusitis, or if you are seeing a area in maxillary wall and the hyperdense area in the sinus cavities, then you have to see what is happening with the walls, maxillary sinus walls. So in bacterial sinusitis, normally it is chronic. So you will see thickened wall. And here you will see diffuse bone loss in the walls because it is acute and aggressive lesion. This is again a case where only right side is involved. Here ethmoidal sinus, ethmoidal bone is involved. Here also, if you see the right side frontal sinus, right side ethmoidal sinus, and this is, and here what you will appreciate that what is happening with the right nasal bony architecture. So probably been operated by ENT surgeon, and the alveolus has been not treated, I think, and because it has spread because of the alveolus. Still the alveolus is having multiple bone loss. The same case here also. This is an aggressive lesion. Here you see it has involved starting from anterior part of maxilla up to the posterior maxilla and sinus, as well as ethmoidal sinus and lateral pterygoid plates also, posterior, medial and lateral pterygoid plates. So this is very advanced lesion. This is again history of but it was a case of mucormycosis. Now here also you should see what is happening with the outer cortical. Just play it again. Just focus here. If you see the bone, it is completely intact. Everywhere it is intact. The sinus walls are intact. The sinus is fine. Ethmoidal is fine. Sphenoidal is fine. All the sinus cavities are fine. But you will see only a small, slight destruction in the premolar region. I'll play it again. You see the intact outer cortical bone, but there's a destruction here. This is very initial sign of mucormycosis. So normally you should always see the premolar region, because most of the times what I have, it is my personal opinion that I have seen cases initially they start from premolar region. And the thinnest part of maxilloalveolar bone, the anterior wall, is at the canine fossa, the thinnest part. So that might be one of the reason why it involves the premolar region and canine region mostly. Here also, this is one case where now here you see the complete loss of bony architecture within the maxillary sinus. So this is, I was telling about fungal versus bacterial. So this is very important to differentiate whether it is fungal. So whenever there is a fungal infection, you will see these arborized cells or air cells within the sinus cavity or within that hyperdense area. So you see, normally it is hypodense. It is completely black. So when it is filled with the fluid, and if you're seeing these small dots, black dots within that fluid, like this, so this is of fungal origin. This is of fungal origin. And the walls are destructed. They are thin in comparison to thickened wall. And it is completely filled, this hyperdense area, but you are seeing these dots also. This is one of the important signs of fungal. And this is the case of bacterial sinusitis. So here you see thickened wall. What you are seeing, it is, there is no air cells within this fluid. One more thing you will appreciate, there's a small hyperdense area within that fluid. This is a sign of chronic maxillary sinusitis. So this is how to differentiate between fungal and bacterial. So not every case is going to convert into mucor. So, and in this misdiagnosis have to be avoided by differentiating between fungal and bacterial sinusitis. This is again a case where you see the destruction is started at the premolar region here also. So these are this is a site of initial destruction. Out of so many cases, this is my experience, the initial destruction, what you will see is here, and the canine and premolar region. Thinning of bone, diffuse bone loss. Again, a case of, this is an advanced case where there's a complete destruction of the left side of maxilla. This is very advanced case, and few of the cases they are coming with just like they are taking out the maxilla out, that tissue. So in most of the advanced cases, there's a loss of palate, hard palate. So these are the advanced cases, and this is one feature we'll appreciate, that the bone comes out from the maxilla. The hard palate comes out. These are again a case of very advanced case where whole palate as well as maxilla is involved. This is again a case where you will not see any type of bone here. The complete loss of hard palate as well as the alveolus, right and left alveolus, as well as the hard palate. This is a post-surgical case where you see there is no bony architecture here on the left side. So this is a post-surgical case, but still the infection remains because it has been treated by ENT surgeon, and the alveolus and the ethmoidal sinus, the infection is still remaining in both the cavities. So most of the times how we think is that if there is pain in mandible, mucor, or the fungal osteomyelitis, it will not occur in maxilla. It only most of the times it occurs in maxillary sinus. That is true, but we have started seeing cases which are involving mandible also. And same, just what we discussed earlier, that how initially we have to diagnose that. Initially you will see those small dots. Here also in mandible you will see these hypodense areas or the small dots. This is an advanced case of fungal osteomyelitis. This is again an advanced case. This case I was discussing, which I have seen, and it was part of a mandible was involved, and later on after 10 days the full started from condyle coronoid process up to the opposite side. It's involved almost all the part of mandible. So this is a gross case of fungal osteomyelitis. So mandible is also been involved, not very uncommon. We have to suspect osteomyelitis, and which is aggressive osteomyelitis in these mandibular cases also. These kind of changes you will see diffuse bone loss on right and left side involving inferior border of mandible as well as condyles. But one thing, this is the last slide. This is a take-home message that not every case is a mucormycosis. You have to rule out the odontogenic causes of maxillary sinusitis. Like this case, we were suspecting mucormycosis because there's a generalized mobility in the teeth in the posterior region, and there's a sinus cavity which are filled and hyperdense areas in left and right sinus. History of pus drainage. He was a COVID patient, so but it came out to be a bacterial sinusitis, as well as the reason for pus drainage was these parapacal pathologies on right and left side. So we have to judicially diagnose these cases and help a patient. I think, yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Vivek. Thank you, Dr. Gere, and the other audience which are listening to my lecture. And if there is any query, we will discuss at the end of our lecture. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Sir, stop screen sharing, sir. Thank you, Dr. Ajay Parihar, sir. With the first two sessions, I am able to say that till now our session is going as per the target, and myself, I feel that I am enlightened by the lectures of you both till now, and now I request Dr. Gere sir to kindly come up to the last session of today's program. Dr. Gere sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Parihar sir, for simplifying my job, because imaging, you are the masters and you dealt it very well. So probably my some part of the major part of the imaging you have shared. So thank you for your contribution. So friend, after clinical presentation, so this, as I said, in this disease you have to have a clinical presentation. We need to correlate clinical symptoms, imaging modality, and when on these both we have high suspicion of mucormycosis, now how we are going to confirm whether it's a mucor or not. So next step come to nasal endoscopy, and in a management of mucormycosis you have to have a multidisciplinary team approach. So get the nasal endoscopy done with the help of your ENT surgeon colleague. If they are able to see any nasal crust, anything, they can take nasal lavage or take a crust which we can send for KOH mount. The KOH mount probably is the modality which we can do within a short span of time. We can get whether there is fungal IP seen or not, and we can decide how aggressively we are going to go about management. Also, the same nasal lavage, the tissue or the crust, we can send it for fungal culture on SDA or BDA. And confirmation is always done by histopathology, where they will report as zygomycosis or mucormycosis. So before going for a management of these patients, as we know, most of the patients are post-COVID, And in post-COVID patient, it's like post-COVID syndrome. So there are variety of comorbidities or conditions which are likely to be there. These patients have high hyperglycemic state, so they are prone for ketoacidosis. These patients have high thromboembolic episodes, so they are prone for myocardial infarction, cerebral infarct, and pulmonary thromboembolism. So we need to rule out all these possibilities. So what is our protocol? What we do whenever the patient is suspected for a mucormycosis and a post-COVID patient where the HRCT score previously was high during the COVID management, we get HRCT done and imaging modality depending on the case, which already sir has discussed. We get all the lab investigation done required for general anesthesia. If the patient is not giving history of COVID infection, in that patient we get antibody testing done. In before admitting the patient in non-COVID area, as per our hospital policy, it is mandatory to have negative RT-PCR report or at least negative antigen report or 14 days from the first day of COVID positivity, because we don't want to put all our entire hospital at risk, all the hospital staff at risk of COVID infection. So we have made a strict policy from the day of 14 days from the day of positivity, because after 10 days there is this COVID virus is not in an infective stage, it cannot. And as far as RT-PCR is concerned, we have omitted the negative RT-PCR report from the mandatory requirement, because RT-PCR can remain positive up to 90 days. So if the patient is 14 days from the day of positivity, if there is antigen negative, then we take it. If RT-PCR negative, nothing like that. But if there is RT-PCR positive and more than 14 days, these patients are unlikely to be infective, because RT-PCR detects the RNA, whether it's a dead or alive, whether it is infective or non-infective, it cannot differentiate. So that we need to keep in mind. We get compulsorily 2D echo done for all the patient, even if the patient is of 26 age of the age, because these patients, if we are they are having high risk of thromboembolism. If we see RA-RV dilatation, right arterium right ventricle dilatation, we can always suspect pulmonary thromboembolism. And when simultaneously, whenever we are sending the patient for HRCT chest, we can get CT pulmonary angio done. All the cases we get ophthalmic evaluation done, because we don't want to miss slightest of the finding. So we have a team of ophthalmic surgeon, we have team of intensivist, we have team of efficient anesthesiologist, because on the score of 14-16 of HRCT score, we are treating this patient. Like whenever there is HRCT score, that is going to be there for months together. So this patient, if they show high score like 14, 15, 16, we are operating all those patients. They are probably the healing lesions on the HRCT. So we don't have to worry, but only thing you need an efficient team of anesthesiologists and intensive care team to manage these high risk patients. Coming to management of mucormycosis, Mucor has a multidisciplinary team approach. I said we need to have a maxillofacial surgeon, you need to have ENT surgeon, you need to have ophthalmologist, you need to have efficient anesthesiologist, intensive care team, neurophysician, cardiologist, everything should be an infectious disease specialist. You need to have a good microbiologist and pathologist to give you a confirmatory diagnosis. So it's a multidisciplinary team approach probably we require. And as far as management of mucormycosis is concerned, there are three modalities by which we deal with this patient. The mainstay remains the surgical debridement. As we already have seen, most of the patient, the etiopathogenesis is avascular necrosis. So whatever area is a necrose, that area we should have to debride. Then we have to give antifungal therapy as a supportive modality. We cannot manage entire case only by giving antifungal. Please mute all. So we have to give antifungal therapy along with surgical debridement, or else if we start only on systemic antifungal, as we know, the area which is affected is avascular. There is no blood supply. So whatever systemic antifungal we are going to give will not reach the target area where we want it to reach. It will remain in the vicinity and the periphery of the area. So that is equally important. And all these patients, they are medically compromised. These patients are nutritionally compromised, so they need a good supportive care in post-operative phase for better recovery. So we'll see some of the cases depending on their variant of presentation. So this is a case, sinoalveolar or sinomaxillary, presented to us with this kind of presentation. And in this patient, we have to do extended maxillectomy. Simple. We reflect the full tissue thickness flap till the area we see healthy bone with tiny bleeding spot, like here. You can see there are tiny bleeding spot. Until unless we see healthy bleeding bone, we have to sacrifice entire necrotic bone, because this necrotic bone is nidus for infection. It can lead to relapse. So friend, complete debridement is key to early, prompt and aggressive surgical intervention, is key to success or key to outcome in these patients. So this patient, if the mucosa is not involved, we can get away by primary closure like this, and we can have oronasal separation. So this is a necrotic bone which we have removed. This is a patient who reported with multiple draining sinuses. And we have to sacrifice the entire necrosed maxilla. That's why we have taken a straight incision. This is after exposure. You can see the roots are exposed. There is a mottling seen. And this is after debridement. You can see complete healthy. This is a closure. This is a resected specimen. This is another case of sinomaxillary in which on exposure, whenever we are reflecting the flap, we can easily separate the flap in this patient, because the periosteum loses its attachment with the dead bone, and we can easily reflect. We can see mottling, you can see yellowish color bone, and you have to completely sacrifice the involved bone. In this case, it was crossing the midline. Little overdue is always better in this patient, because probably in this patient we may not, like, if along with maxillary sinus we always open ethmoids and sphenoid through the same approach, we debride them, we clean them thoroughly, and we give thorough wash, because at least 1 liter saline wash along with all the local medications we give, because it will reduce the bacterial load, fungal load from that side. So, and when we remove the maxilla, you can see this kind of entire necrosed maxilla with entire blackness of the. If you see on the labial aspect, it will see just yellowish color. But when we see on the inner aspect of maxilla, it is badly affected, or it is badly affected like this. And you see complete dirty necrosis by fungus. This is another case which was involving entire maxilla. And this is a delayed presentation. What already sir has said, it was involving the body of zygoma. So we have to do extended maxillectomy in this case. You can see the necrosed bone, hardly there will be any attachment. The moment we reflect the soft tissue flap, we can get away that maxilla will fall down on its own, just with the help of periosteal probe or suction. If you manipulate it, the maxilla will fall down. It will it loses all its attachment. And this is after extended maxillectomy. You should have healthy tissue all around. And if the mucosa is not involved, probably we can get away by having a primary closure like this, having oronasal separation by mucosal layer. And all the tissue what we have removed, we have to send it for histopath. This is a case which I have already shown you. There is the sino-orbital involvement. There was ethmoidal involvement, complete vision loss. So in this case, we have to do orbital excenteration. We have to sacrifice the eye, completely curate the ethmoid. You can see the entire black fungus in the ethmoid sinus. So we have to curate ethmoid fungus, give a thorough wash, and then pack the cavity. So if these cases we can pick up at early stage, we can definitely avoid such kind of morbid condition. But once the vision is lost, once the fungi has invaded into the muscle cone, if we don't remove this eyeball, it can invade into the cavernous sinus, and it can lead to meningitis and cavernous sinus thrombosis, probably which is fatal. So though these are the morbid procedure, but for saving the patient's life, we have to perform it. There is no other alternative for that. This is another extensive case in which there was sino-orbitomaxillary involvement, in which orbit was involved, maxilla was involved. So in this case, when we exposed, there was yellow mottled bone, there was no blood supply. When we made a window, you can see the sinuses were pus filled, and we ended up with, there was a palatine mucosa necrosis. So in this case, half palatine mucosa was lost. We could get a closure on the one side, other side we have to pack it, and then probably then we can give interim obturator and other things. Probably that is challenge for prosthodontists, how to give a soft tissue based obturator, interim obturators. That is a burning issue, not now what we are facing. So in this case, we have sacrificed maxilla, the orbit. So this is a case of sino-orbitomaxillary involvement. Yes, the surgical debridement though remain the mainstay, we have to aggressively and thoroughly and promptly intervene and remove entire necrotic area, which has to be supplemented by systemic antifungal therapy. As on date, we all are aware there is like these are now not available that easily, and it is a like in a state of Maharashtra, the distribution is taken up by the collector, and it is through the centralized system like Remdesivir in Maharashtra. I'm not aware about the MP state, but in Maharashtra it is through the government. So there are three variants of amputation which are available. One is liposomal, other is lyophilized, and third is crystalline. So the liposomal is best. The dose ranges from 2 to 5 milligram per kg body weight for liposomal. For lyophilized, it is 1 mg per kg body weight. Also, the drug which are used as a step down therapy or supportive modality includes your posaconazole tablet or syrup or isavuconazole tablet. Friend, these are the drugs which are having high nephrotoxicity. That's why it is better to avoid them as a prophylactic measure. They are only having their therapeutic indications and not a prophylactic indication. Now, in these patients, after surgery, they need good nursing care, the good respiratory care, chest physiotherapy, sepsis control, because on the second day, I'm seeing most of the patient who goes to ICU, these patients are having a TLC count of 60-64,000. Their blood pressure is dropping like anything. They are in septic shock. We have to put them on the NORAD and all the other supportive things. So they need a good nursing post-op care. And these patients, as they are recovered from COVID, they are financially drained out. We also need to think some sort of support for these patients, how we can treat them with minimal financial burden on their families. And this, I think all the governments are coming up. In the state of Maharashtra government has come up that in a government scheme we can manage these patients, but now the final practical way is yet to find out. But we have started a few cases under government scheme, and we are treating them under government scheme. Now another, the challenge doesn't end here, because the surgeon's part is done, the reimaging part is done. What about restoring this jaw? And probably Vivek sir will have to find a solution, and his team has a difficult task ahead. So this is a case which has healed after the total maxillectomy. There is only soft tissue separation between the oral cavity and the mucosa. Like this patient I treated after first COVID wave, now 3 months post-op. There are no clinical signs of relapse. And this patient reported to me, sir, I want my teeth. Now what we can do? So there are few options left, and probably that can be another webinar. This is beyond the scope of today's presentation, how to rehabilitate them. Probably Vivek sir and his team of prosthodontics, entire prosthodontic society really have a burning challenge to face in a coming time. And definitely we all collectively will find a solution for this as well, and will rehabilitate this patient to the fullest possible way. So friends, conclusively, I will like to say that the brief and thorough history is most important thing. Be vigilant in your inspection and clinical evaluation. Complete investigation is mandatory. Don't restrict or reserve your modalities of investigation in these patients. Meticulous, aggressive and prompt intervention, we can save organ, we can save eye, we can save jaw, and ultimately the life, the precious life, friends. So as a dental surgeon, we may encounter this patient at earlier stage, and you can be a lifesaver for someone by early detecting them and directing them for a proper treatment. So conclusively, I wish all the dental surgeons to be vigilant, to be prompt in their actions, and whatever kind of help required, all the oral surgeons across the India, we on our national forum, we are discussing. All the associations are ready to help. In doubt, feel free to communicate with me or any your known oral surgeon, ENT surgeon or ophthalmic surgeon. Ultimately, we all are here for well-being of all the patients and human beings. This is a difficult time for humanity, and we really have to be on our toes and give our best possible efforts and prove ourselves worth of being a doctor. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience listening. Thank you, MP State IDA, for giving me an opportunity to share my views. Thank you, one and all. I hope I made justice to your valuable Sunday time.
Sir, very much. Thanks to both the speakers for very wonderful and informative informations which they have shared with us. As this is the last session, I would like to also acknowledge, apart from Dr. Gopi, Dr. Anand Kumar, Dr. Murukan, Dr. Sanjay Prasad, Dr. Ajay Gaikwad, and also our very own Dr. Kamlesh Badonia sir, Dr. Ruchi Bhatia, Dr. Anuradha Agrawal, and Dr. Unnati Pitle, Dr. Ankita Vastani, and many more friends, seniors, and the dignitaries from all over India to be here. And definitely, as you said, Girish sir, our Prosthodontic Society will definitely take this as a challenge, and we will be coming out with the prosthodontic protocols in the coming time to come. Being said that, I request the participants, if they have certain questions, please put up in the chat box. Meanwhile, Parihar sir and Girish sir, I have few questions which I have wrote down, previous
Yes,
questions. First of them was, does the thrombi caused by fungi can't be resolved by blood thinners?
No, absolutely not, because the etiopathogenesis or the pathophysiology of the fungi is altogether. The blood clot is amenable to dissolve by the anticoagulant therapy, not by the fungal thrombi. Fungi, otherwise we wouldn't have given antifungal.
Okay.
We would have given just heparin and warfarin.
Okay. One more question is there. Zinc is the growth factor for mucor, but we give zinc supplement in COVID to cure the COVID. Your opinion?
Yes, sir. Sir, since yesterday only in our task force meeting, what we had a discussion that zinc
Yes.
and increased serum ferritin, these are the agents which are giving the favorable condition for the fungal multiplication. So definitely, probably the guidelines from the task force will definitely change to the COVID management center, and they have to avoid using zinc. And also the patient who are having a high serum ferritin level, we need to get rid of that, because these are creating a favorable environment for the fungal multiplication.
What are the precautions to be taken by the post-COVID patients to prevent from mucormycosis?
Very good question, sir, because all the task forces are now working on this agenda now, how we can prevent it. First of all, now vigilant inspection by all the COVID centers. Like whenever these patients are in a COVID center for the management, what we are recommending them that we should have their ENT and dental and maxillofacial evaluation on 5th and 10th day whenever they are in active infection. They need to have a absolute glycemic control, whatever the aggressive way it is required. And if earliest suspicions or sign of mucormycosis, get them investigated. Basically, now what modality of choice we have formulated or the task force has recommended is the gadolinium enhanced MRI with fat suppression, because that can pick up the earliest changes.
Yes, sir, absolutely, sir. Then the next
maintain
question.
a few points I missed out. We need have to maintain oral and nasal hygiene, because the infection itself starts from there. So patient who are having the treated for the COVID, they need to control their sugar, maintain the nasal hygiene. Like they can use the nasal wash with 0.01% betadine, or solution doesn't make a difference. What ultimately all of us has learned that it is a mechanical cleansing action that makes a difference. So whether adding a betadine or other really makes a difference or not, we don't don't have a first-hand experience, but we should maintain a good oral and nasal hygiene by flushing the nasal cavities frequently.
Okay, sir. Will paresthesia be present in each case?
No, absolutely not. It depends on where. Like for example, if there is a maxillary involvement and there is infraorbital canal involvement, then only there will be paresthesia.
Okay.
So it depends. Like in some cases, if there is nasopalatine involvement, the anterior palatine paresthesia will be involved. But if paresthesia is present, it is more and most likely it is a mucor. Probably it is one of the first pathognomic sign of the mucor or the osteomyelitis.
Okay. X-ray PNS or Waters view is helpful in diagnosing as a modality.
Parihar sir, I think you can come in.
Parihar sir?
Yes, sir. For advanced cases, yes. For initial cases, it will not come. They are not helpful. For advanced cases, yes.
Okay. See, what is my take on this, sir? Anyways, if you are getting a X-ray done in a practical point of view, patient is spending some bucks, and we are not getting the handful information. I think every remote place also has a CT scan available. Ideal will be the MRI, gadolinium based enhanced MRI with fat separation. If that is not, the minimum requirement will be CT-PNS.
Okay. Is methylene blue drops helpful in prevention?
Sir, I already said what is important is the mechanical cleansing. So adding methylene blue, adding betadine, or adding chlorhexidine or whatsoever, how helpful they are, there is no first-hand experience. So in vitro study has shown that it retards it controls the growth of this betadine, methylene blue retards the fungal growth on the culture. That is in vitro study. In vivo, we don't have, and probably it will be very difficult to standardize the study also.
Then there is a very good question. After how long time after surgery we should start the prosthetic phase?
Sir, as far as what we say, the fungi which are invading the bone, where there is a bone invasion, in that case we recommend 3 months waiting period, because now yesterday's the question which was unanswered in task force discussion was when we can say these patients are disease free from the mucor. So until and unless they are disease free, we cannot say. So the clinical signs, there has to be some clinical signs of improvement. Along with that, we need to have some radiological marker. So what was suggested was nuclear imaging, but how practically possible? It's really a question to be asked. And what we are following, up to 3 months from the day of day we did a surgery, we don't recommend any sort of reconstruction as far as flaps and other things are concerned. Prosthetic, I think you are the better person, you can tell about.
Yes,
like surgical obturator, interim obturator, that definitely we have to give for nutritional by doing a prosthetic separation of the oral and nasal cavity to improve their intake, or else we have to go for a feeding peg. What is your take, Vivek?
Okay.
Probably you are a better person to answer.
Yes, sir, absolutely, sir. We should, and definitely there should be some marker which can define whether the mucormycosis is present or not. And only after that, we should proceed with the prosthetic phase, as the way it used to be in malignant lesions. But being said that, I know this is very aggressive as it is going on, and it's really a pity situation, and you feel very sad for the young patients who are losing maxilla, the whole of the maxilla, mandible, and eyes also. So really challenging time for prosthetic people, and as for all the dentists in the time to come to rehabilitate the patients in some or the other way, so as to they can carry on with their life with dignity and with comfort. Then there is one more question, sir. Home quarantine patients are home quarantine patient also in the risk of fungal infection?
Yes.
Definitely, I told 25% patient which I have written out of 103 patients, they were not diagnosed for COVID. Forget about home quarantine.
Okay.
They were not treated for COVID itself.
Oh,
there are cases which are coming who
So
have-
probably they had a asymptomatic COVID, or they haven't tested themselves, because I work in a like rural like Aurangabad, which has a remote or rural places from the nearby. So the places in the periphery or remote area, if they have fever, they don't get tested themselves. They go to GP, take some medicine, and stay at home. That's why probably these are the patients which are undiagnosed or untreated.
Parihar sir, would you like to add something?
Yes, because this is very new, the way Mucor is coming, and we cannot say it is purely because of steroid or it is purely because the patient who are diabetic. So we cannot be judgmental on this, because we have seen patients who are non-diabetic, we have seen patients who are young, we have seen patients who have not taken steroids, we have seen patients who are not been admitted to hospital, or not in antibiotics, long-term antibiotics, which are, these are the predisposing factors for Mucor, which we have read up till now, that long-term antibiotics, these corticosteroids, diabetic status or diabetic ketoacidosis, all these can lead to Mucor. So we are seeing few cases. Yeah, it is common in these patients, but yes, we have seen few cases. 10-15% cases are coming who are non-diabetic, who are young, and who have been diagnosed with the Mucor.
सर इससे तो यही समझ में आता है कि किसी को भी हो सकता है और कभी भी हो सकता है, मतलब हवा में ही जहर है।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल,
केवल इंडिया की
और
केवल इंडिया में, मतलब अपने देश में केवल, बाकी विदेशों में स्थिति जो है इस तरह की कुछ भी नहीं मिल रही है।
कोविड का भी जो स्ट्रेन है वो भी एक फैक्टर हो सकता है। अभी इसी जगह मैं देख
सर, कैन आई ऑर्डर?
Yes sir, please.
Sir, even Western countries are reporting, but the number is less.
Okay.
Probably, yes. It is not like that. Only Mucor is only in India. Western countries are also reporting, because we are in touch with overseas faculties also. So there are cases being reported, but the number is not that rampant. Few reasons, because the facilities, the people themselves are aware. They get they have a high, like aggressive sugar monitoring, and the protocols of treatment are much different than what we have. Yeah, and also probably the what we can say, the kind of environment we are living in, it's the multifactorial. We cannot just say probably the strain which is there in double mutant, triple mutant, Indore strain, Aurangabad strain, Amravati strain. So exactly the reason is yet to, but yes, definitely we are at high prevalence than the world, and probably there are few reasons, being the late reporting. The hyperglycemic state is one of the most common risk factor which we have identified.
Sir, just out of context and just a real challenge is, as you have said, that economic burden to the patient. Matlab, yes. It is so sad. Matlab, एक आम आदमी कैसे, how he will bear the expense of 5 to 10 lakhs for mucormycosis, and वो कोविड से निकल के म्यूकोर पे आया है और म्यूकोर से निकल के नेफ्रोटॉक्सिसिटी में जाएगा।
डॉक्टर विवेक
जी सर,
मेरा एक फर्स्ट हैंड एक्सपीरियंस चल रहा है। जो आप बता रहे हैं ना, कॉस्ट इतनी नहीं है, लगभग 25 लाख के आसपास केवल मेडिसिन की कॉस्ट आ रही है। क्या सही है डॉक्टर गिरे, क्या मैं सही बोल रहा हूँ?
Sir, it depends on the severity. Like अगर if it is a rhinocerebral, the dose is dependent on severity. The minimum
जो मेरे को पर्सनल जो एक मेरा रिलेटिव इन्वॉल्व हुआ है, उसमें केवल राइनो और थोड़ा सा ऑर्बिटल था, फिर भी जो उनको 42 डेज का एक एम्फोटेरिसिन 400 मिलीग्राम प्रिस्क्राइब किया गया।
Sir, actually 4 gram is a dose. 4 grams comes to 80 vial. 80 vial is 7,000. आज का जो market है, तो around 5,60,000 will be the minimum cost, along with other medicine and hospitalization. So it depends. Like, and the cost has really gone to double, and that is beyond our control. The 20 days ago, when I was started, that time the cost was around 3,000. Now it's 7,000 plus, and now it is not available in state of Maharashtra. The distribution is centralized from the authorities, and we have to get it from the collector.
So like now it is being same here as well as in Madhya Pradesh, and there is a great concern also, because somehow actions are being taken on the dentist if they are prescribing amphotericin B or remdesivir like drugs. So
No,
clear-cut
I
guidelines.
think then the association has to raise this point, because
Yes,
if
sir.
the
Yes, sir.
dental surgeons and maxillofacial are treating and they are not allowed to use amphotericin, because we are the first hand people who are
Yes,
frontline
sir.
warriors we
Yes,
are
sir.
treating. Yes,
Yes, sir.
then and like on OPD basis we should avoid injection amphotericin B, but
Yes, sir.
in the tablet posaconazole, syrup posaconazole, if we have confirmation on KOH mount, we can definitely prescribe. If after having KOH mount, if any dental surgeon is being troubled, we should definitely as an association should raise a voice
नहीं,
and
लेकिन
strongly condemn it.
लेकिन जैसा डॉक्टर गिरे आपने बोला कि ये मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी अप्रोच है, तो ज्यादा अच्छा नहीं रहेगा कि ओरल सर्जन किसी मेडिसिन वाले को अपने साथ में लेके पूरे को ट्रीट करे?
सर डेफिनेटली मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ, मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी अप्रोच है, बट एज अ फर्स्ट हैंड जैसे आपके पास आया है, आपने KOH माउंट कराया है, तो it did not have to be physician, and amphotericin B it has to be given in hospital admission only. So hospital admission में जब हमारे पास तो पॉलिसी है, once the patient is under medical care or in ICU care, it invariably goes to intensivist.
Right.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
There
फॉर
is one
एग्जाम्पल
question.
क्या होता है सर, आपने केस को डिटेक्ट किया है, अगर पेशेंट को हमने XYZ एक्सपेंसेस बोले, उसको अरेंज करने में 2 दिन का टाइम लग रहा है, तो फॉर टाइम बिंग वी हाउ टू स्टार्ट देम ऑन posaconazole. If your KOH mount is proven and if you are suspect high suspicion, so at least we have to start them on KOH, the posaconazole or isavuconazole. That should not be restricted by the authorities, because we can't deprive them from the treatment.
Right.
Okay. What are the chances of recurrences?
Recurrence chances are very high. These patients, like the mortality is very high, around 30 to 70% is the mortality, depending on the general status, depending on the thoroughness of debridement, depending on the aggressiveness of the medical management. The recurrence will depend. Like there are many patients, if there is treated by single alone modality, for example, if it is only treated by endoscopic approach and there is maxillary involvement, and we haven't removed the necrosed maxilla, those cases are definitely going to they are bound for relapse. There will be a recurrence. So it depends on the relapse and recurrence will be multifactorial. Post response, the thoroughness of surgical debridement done, the aggressiveness of the medical management which has been done post operatively. There are good chances of relapse, and probably these patients may require multiple settings to get rid of the infection to fullest.
One of the prosthodontists have posed, I suppose, seeing the question that if we radiologically plan critical margins of excisions, which will help in the planning of prosthesis for retention and stability. But I think so, sir, once you open the case and then only you can be sure कि कहाँ तक आपको you will get a fresh bone and bone full of blood supply.
Sir, I think Pariyar sir will agree to this, that the things which we see radiologically and clinically it is more extensive than what we see on imaging, because to appear on imaging it has to be 30% minimal demineralization. So that will probably not be there in each and every case. So when we open up, the margin will be little extended than what we see radiologically.
Yes, sir. Are children also at risk of mucormycosis?
Sir, my fingers are crossed and I am praying that this should not. Otherwise, we'll be really in a bad shape. I will just like to tell a small story. A week ago, I was a ENT surgeon referred a patient with 12 years of age, all the segmental mobility. And he was also worried, I was also worried that this should not turn out to be a mucor. If it turns out to be a mucor, we are really in a bad shape of the health status. Then we did MRI. That for that patient, it was unfortunate. It was diagnosed as lymphoma, but for entire humanity, what we say, it was not a mucor, is a good sign. If it starts affecting the youngest patient which I have done for mucor is 26 years of the age, and I hope and pray that it should not involve the children. It will be very traumatic emotionally as well as probably in other grounds also for every one of us.
Very true, sir. What are the known odontogenic symptom of pains in the post-COVID situation? Means even I couldn't understand the question. If the patient come with mucor with a few symptoms, should we start the medication? What advice can we give? You have already answered.
See, until and unless it is confirmed or at least some kind of high suspicion, you cannot start antifungal therapy as an empirical, the way we start antibiotic. At
बिल्कुल
least
सही
the
है।
KOH mount is KOH mount, what we should at least get it done.
Vivek sir,
Yes, sir.
the question actually, there is nothing called few symptoms. Either it is
जी सर, जी सर।
or it is not mucor. If it is
Yeah,
mucor,
yeah, yeah.
we start treatment. If it is not mucor, definitely antifungals are not empirically or we can advise.
So the takeaway message is that until unless you are not very sure about whether the patient is having mucor or not, please don't start antifungal therapy. Is it right, sir?
True,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
And even for KOH, I'm telling few of the patients, I will request his Dr. Giri's opinion also in this. Like for QH, if it is positive, it is not confirmatory, it is mucor. So
Yes,
not
yes.
every QH positive patient
Agree.
is not a mucor patient. So this
Absolutely.
also we have to understand.
So how to confirm the mucor?
Radiological one and clinical symptoms.
Sir, yes, and the confirmatory for is culture and histopath, but it will take its own time.
Histopath also. But
I
it's
say
not a
only
confirmatory.
fungal isolation and high suspicion can be a good parameter to start antifungal.
Then there is a question: if mucormycosis can occur in asymptomatic patients of COVID, then why the cases of mucor arising more nowadays? यानी पहले भी था सर पोस्ट कोविड सिचुएशन, बट अभी क्यों हो रहा है?
I also like these are the patients who are non-COVID. Now they were asymptomatic or untreated COVID patient. Like in our study, what we have done, if the antibodies IgG has been done, many of them were found IgG positive. So
Okay.
yes, definitely. Why the question I am not getting answer yet is why after second wave? First wave के बाद इतना common नहीं था. Second wave के बाद में इतना common क्यों है? We are yet to find the answer, sir. Probably we can justify it mutation everything, but why not after first wave? Why it is more common after second wave?
Sir, might be this new strain might be affecting the
that is
immune
mutation
system
and
of
all.
the body.
But it is not a
In such
proven
a
and
way.
documented fact as of now.
Yeah, it is not proven as such.
Yes.
Then there is one question repeatedly being asked: which out of CTPNS, nasal endoscopy, and CBCT, इसमें MRI नहीं लिखा है, लेकिन which out of these four will be the most helpful investigation to rule out mucor?
All of us, all we have to do combine approach. None of a single modality will. Clinical presentation, history, nasal endoscopy, imaging, and fungal isolation. Everything has to be there to come to confirmatory or conclusive diagnosis, sir.
कोई blood test blood test नहीं है कुछ भी.
So blood test में कुछ नहीं है, sir. We can get only inflammatory markers and all. They will be anyway present on the other way around. Blood parameter में कोई नहीं चीज है. Sugar we can get कि only hyperglycemia है कि नहीं है, उतना देखने के लिए.
Does vaccination
sugar hyperglycemia will never justify like we will not able to diagnose fungal infection.
और हॉस्पिटल कितने रिस्पांसिबल हो सकते हैं इसके लिए? हॉस्पिटल की कितनी रिस्पांसिबिलिटी हो सकती है?
Sir, except for breathing, everything is blamed. Like water, oxygen, everything. Now after some days they will say people are breathing, that's why they are getting mucor.
Sir, अभी एक और ऐसे ही वो है इसमें statement. Does vaccination has any role in prevention of mucormycosis?
What?
Does vaccination has any role in prevention of mucormycosis?
Sir, probably.
अच्छा वो ये नहीं बोला सर कि it is the cause of mucormycosis, huh?
People can say, but sir, we don't have first-hand data. But all the authorities, government authorities, are collecting the data. Like from the state of Maharashtra, what is the mandatory guidelines from the health authorities? Every day we have to fill the stats. The number of patients reported, treated, what kind of treatment done, hyperglycemic status, the serum ferritin status, their whether they were COVID positive, non-COVID positive, their vaccination was done or not, single dose, second dose. They are collecting the data. Probably with larger sample size, the larger number of data, that this question will be answered soon. Probably.
Yes, sir.
But
yes,
definitely,
sir.
like the way COVID symptoms are dramatically less as compared to non-vaccinated. So on this platform, I like to request every one of us, we should all encourage people for vaccination. How effective it is, what role it has, this is a question not to be asked. Some or other way, it is definitely going to help.
Some studies says that mucor also affects small intestine. Is it
Sir,
true?
we have seen like renal cases has been reported, intestinal cases has been reported, cerebral cases has been reported. Probably only piles is yet to diagnose with mucor.
Okay, वो भी मिल जाएगा सर थोड़ा।
मास्क का रोल तो मास्क का रोल जो है, डर्टी मास्क का रोल भी हो सकता है इसके अंदर काफी हद
Sir,
तक।
it's a multifactorial. That I'm saying कि अगर definitely
नॉर्मल कमीशन में क्या था, म्यूकोर इस ऐसा जरूरी नहीं कि बाहर से ही आए, इट इज देयर इन द बॉडी, लाइक कैंडिडा हम लोग नॉर्मल फ्लोरा के अंदर इसकी प्रेजेंस है, तो
this is a very good point by Pariyar sir, that it is a normal common cell. Even in a healthy patient you can isolate the muci,
and that is why I asked for KOH, because if KOH will be positive because it is a normal oral flora. So that is the one thing.
नहीं, इसमें जो है डॉक्टर परिहार, एक और पॉइंट मेरे दिमाग में 2 दिन से चल रहा है, वो शायद गिरे साहब भी उसको बताएंगे कि अपनी बॉडी में एक सारे माइक्रोब्स का एक इकोसिस्टम एग्जिस्ट करता है।
बिल्कुल, एंटीबायोटिक और मेडिसिन उसको कर देती है डिस्टर्ब, बिल्कुल
है ना, और मेडिसिन जो है उसको डिस्टर्ब कर देती है, जैसे एंटीबैक्टीरियल दे दी आपने, एंटीवायरल दे दी, तो बचा क्या फंगस, उसकी ग्रोथ के चांसेस बढ़ गए।
I agree, sir. The altered host response is like, this is infectious disease, and the crux of the infectious disease is altered host response creates the favorable environment for any infection to occur.
Okay.
Along with mucor, we have seen Bell's palsy, herpes zoster, frequent herpes zoster, other viral infections also.
Yes, sir.
Not only fungal.
Many patients, like even in osteomyelitis, what we are treating, we are getting a mixed picture of mucor as well as aspergillus.
Yes.
Okay.
We have few cases in which both are involved. We have few cases in aspergillus as well as it is very rare.
And the other theory is now the management will become very difficult in these patients because the drug of choice in aspergillus is voriconazole, and voriconazole is if we use in mucor, it favors the mucor growth. So that is the probably a tough scenario.
We are at the end of the session, but definitely I'll request if Dr. Manish Verma, our CDH Chairman Head Office, wants to say something, or Dr. Deepak Makhijani sir, if they're here. If any dignitary wants to, or any member want to put some point. As we are having, we were having almost 320 participants in this session. On this platform, I will request the head office to kindly look into the matter where the dentists are being held up for prescribing the life-saving drugs. Either they should not be involved in this, or there should be crystal clear guidelines from the center and from the state governments that only these people will be responsible for the treatment. Then probably the dentist will keep themselves away from such situations, because blaming the dentist for prescribing the life-saving drugs in the days to come, when the dentists are playing such a vital role, the role of dentist in treating and their contribution for COVID situation was not appreciated, firstly. And secondly, when they have now a very vital role in mucormycosis pandemic, and in such situations, if the government authorities are holding dentists responsible for the diagnosis and taking care and or prescribing of the emergency drugs, then it is a very critical situation, and there should be a clear-cut guideline from the government. And I request the head office and all the different specialties, like Girish sir, you are also a responsible shareholder of one of the association. Even Parihar sir, you are also one of the responsible person of your society, and so are the member of IPS society here. We will take this issue in our platform, and if the proper action will not be taken early enough, then the dentist will take their hand back from contributing to this emergency situation. Girish sir, your take on this?
Sir, actually, from the Maharashtra State Task Force, the guideline has been issued. There, the inclusion of dental surgeon, prosthodontist, maxillofacial surgeon, ENT, everyone. The guidelines are very clear. I will share those guidelines in mucormycosis management, which has been formulated by the Maharashtra State Task Force. Probably
Yes, sir.
that you can represent with your all the speciality
Yes,
and
sir.
all the association to the government. So the
Yes,
role
sir.
of dental surgeon and maxillofacial or any other all the specialties of dentistry cannot be denied. That has been very well taken by the task force from the state of Maharashtra. Probably we are the people who are worst affected in this pandemic as far as state-wise is concerned. So these all the states are following the guidelines which has been established by the other states. So this will be helpful if you can share, and some
Sure,
of the
sure.
people, influential people from the state can represent it to fraternity at the higher level.
Sure, sir. Sure. We'll take the matter ahead, and I'll request you to share the documents with us. Being said that, I would now like to thank Dr. Ajay Parihar sir for his contribution and thank him for his such a wide knowledge in his subject, and definitely such small efforts which will create a lot of awareness amongst us dentists, and give this knowledge is our backbone and strength in the days to come. And it is this knowledge which will make us equally responsible in the COVID and post-COVID situations, and make us more strong in our contribution in the day to come as far as the national scenario is concerned, post-COVID situation. And also I would like to thank Dr. Vijay Kumar Gire sir, who is Honorary General Secretary of AO MSI Maharashtra chapter. And definitely, Anup sir, if you want to conclude the session.
हाँ नहीं, बिल्कुल सही बोल रहे हैं हम, है ना। तो अपन इसमें एक लेटर जो है और अथॉरिटीज को, स्पेशली काउंसिल को और लोकल अथॉरिटीज को स्ट्रिक्ट गाइडलाइन के लिए अपन लिखेंगे।
Yes,
और
sir.
इसके अलावा जो आज का बहुत ही अच्छा हमारा जो रहा, पूरे के पूरे इतना क्रिस्टल क्लियर जो है म्यूकोर के बारे में गाइडलाइन जो है वो, और उसके बारे में जो आप लोगों ने जो एनलाइट किया है, प्रकाश डाला है, वो बहुत ही फायदेमंद रहा है हम सभी के लिए। और इसी तरह के और इसमें जो अपडेट होंगे उसके लिए हम नेक्स्ट मंथ या उसके नेक्स्ट मंथ में एक बार फिर से कोशिश करेंगे कि अभी 2 महीने में क्या नई चेंजेस आए हैं, व्हाट आर द गाइडलाइंस जो हैं वो चेंजेस आई हैं, उसको हम फिर से एक बार और सभी के साथ शेयर करेंगे। थैंक यू डॉक्टर विजय कुमार गिरे, डॉक्टर अर्जुन परिहार, नहीं डॉक्टर अजय परिहार, आपका अर्जुन के नाम से
सन के नाम से होगा सर।
डॉक्टर अजय परिहार, थैंक यू। और सभी पार्टिसिपेंट्स को बहुत बहुत थैंक यू। और लगातार अपडेट रहना ही जो है वो जरूरी है। और ये आपदा में जो है वो बाकी सब लोग तो तरह तरह की अपॉर्चुनिटी ढूंढ रहे हैं, हमको ये अपॉर्चुनिटी ढूंढना है कि हमारी स्किल या नॉलेज को कम से कम कितना ज्यादा और एनहांस कर लें, और किस तरीके से इस विपदा के काल में हम किसी ना किसी फॉर्म में जो है सभी के काम आ सके, उसके लिए कोशिश हमारी जारी रहेगी। और थैंक यू डॉक्टर विवेक, बहुत अच्छा
थैंक यू सर।
Thank you one and all for
thank
you so much.
We will try to formulate a advisory or guideline on mucormycosis with the help of the experts which we have here, and may it be fruitful for humanity and
Yes.
In the time to come. So thank you all. Thank you Ashish Garg sir, आप मुझे दिख रहे हो इसलिए thanks for being here, and thanks to all of you, those who were here, all the seniors, all the dignitaries. Your presence make us feel our this small effort worthwhile. डॉक्टर प्रकाश दीक्षित सर भी दिखे अभी एकदम
डॉक्टर
से।
अनुपम भार्गव भी इसमें प्रेजेंट है, डॉक्टर अनुपम भार्गव दिल्ली से।
अनुपम भार्गव सर, we welcome you and thank you for being here. And there are many dignitaries, I know those who are here, and I would not like to forget Dr. Sumit Jain, our CD chairman of the IDMP state branch, which whose effort we have been able to do this. And due to his family emergency, he was not with us in the initial part of the session. But definitely I would like to acknowledge him as well for his efforts in this whole endeavor. So thank you all. Thank you, dear friends, and look up for us for more important CD programs. Yes, CD programs are the backbone of the society, and we will keep it continue. Whatever may be the situation, we will keep it continue in the time to come. Thank you, sir. Thank you all. Girish sir, you can end the session.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Take care. Take care all. Be safe.